if you want to know what are the top 5 stated reasons for not moving to France for Masters in Management abroad, this video is for you. So I started talking to my friends and even my classmates, even people at my workplace, just to know what are the general thoughts about pursuing Masters in Management in France. And I know that I have had a very nice experience. I absolutely love every part of my journey. I know that there are some things that do bother a lot of people who might have done things differently if they were to go back in time. So if you're someone who's looking to research which country is the best for you for Masters in Management, I think this video is very important for you to know exactly what people do not like about France in general, and a little bit of my opinion about what I think about it, so that you can know the two sides of the coin. So without further ado, let's get started. So the number one reason that I hear the most is, of course, language barrier. Now, this is something that is not at all something I can explain. It is true that French people do speak mostly in French. They are not very often bilingual. So yes, the language does pose problems, especially when you get out of the school and try to live normally. You cannot really do everything in English. And of course, you might learn some of the French, but there are going to be a little bit of nuances that you might not completely get, which might hinder your process to integrate into the French community completely. So definitely language barrier does pose a problem, and I understand why. The second thing that everybody says is that it's not as highly recognized as US schools, for example, all over the world. So one of my friend actually told me how he felt when he went to an exchange abroad, and not everybody knew about what ESSEC is. Even when he explained to them the concept and how it works and how flexibility is, they were really impressed, but still they did not know that such a school exists. So this, I'm talking about the top 5 MBA schools in the world. So he did feel like if at all he were to do things differently, he might have chosen a school that is more globally recognized. Now, of course, this goes completely depending on how and what your personal preferences are. So if you do want to work in Europe, you do want to work in London, France, Germany, anywhere, of course, everybody knows the top MIM schools here. So everything is great. But yes, when you might move out of this horizon, then the school standalone might not help you to enhance that brand name, but then your experience as well. And what I think is that definitely the experience out of the B school is what counts more than the name associated with it. But I do understand why people might think differently, because everybody's career outcome is different. The third thing that people say is that it gets a bit lonely because the Indian community is not very large in Paris, even in the rest of France, of course. So you can imagine that if it's not large in Paris, it might be really small in other cities. And not all schools are based out of Paris. So that does pose a lot of cultural differences at all points of time, and mixed with the language barrier, some people do tend to feel lonely in this country. And yes, what I think about it is that yes, the Indian community is not very big. Of course, now a lot of people are moving to France and finally working there because of such amazing educational opportunities and then work opportunities. But yes, I will have to agree that the Indian community is not as large as it would be in UK, for example, Singapore, USA, and those countries, because it's not that much of a community yet. But I'm pretty sure that it's getting better as we all move here. The fourth thing that I heard from one of my colleagues actually at work was that the quality of education was not at par as what they expected. So, of course, this is completely subjective because there's no grounding as to where we are comparing this quality of education from. Because when I do tend to speak to master's students in India, they believe that the curriculum that we study in France is really good. But then when you tend to speak to people from USA, maybe things are more organized, more advanced, even in terms of how they've evolved over the years with their MBA courses. I think MIM is pretty new in that sense. So, of course, things are still changing. They introduce new things in every schools every day, trying to get better. But is it already at par in terms of the world-class quality of education? Maybe not, because the US universities are really old, really known for the management programs. So yes, if you do compare it to US, I'm gonna say that it can be a 1920 kind of comparison situation. But then of course, again, I don't think any school and any program in general offers that kind of flexibility. So of course you need to weigh the pros and cons before you make the choice about the quality of education, basically. The fifth and the last thing is that the salaries are not that great in Europe and in France. So, this is again a very debatable subject that everybody keeps talking about, because the standard of living is also slightly lower than the countries that pay more, such as USA, such as Singapore, because the standard of living is high, the salaries are higher. But then, of course, I do understand if we are coming from India and we are indifferent to any country as our choice of master's education, yes, the salaries are going to be slightly lower than certain countries. So I'm going to say, in terms of ratio, I think the salaries are only as high in UK as is the living expenses. So I'm going to say that UK and Europe in general fall into the same bucket. But because of the tax regulation, because of other things, UAE pays really well, USA pays really well, even Singapore sometimes for certain careers pays better than Europe. So that is also kind of true, kind of not true, because again, you don't get the work life balance that you get in Europe anywhere else. So yeah, I mean, I think from all the five points mentioned, honestly, I do agree with somewhat with most of them, because I do understand where people saying those things are coming from. But again, I think it's very, very personal as per what you want to do, where you want to be, how you want your experience to be, mainly because I can make another video on the pros of Europe, which is very, very unique to Europe, which is a longer course, which is flexibility, which is long stay back periods, so on and so forth, which also makes it very attractive to people. But this video was focused only on cons, so that's what I did. Now, if you have any other follow up questions, definitely write them in the comment section below and I'm going to answer them. And if you have any video ideas, don't forget to mention them down below as well. Subscribe to this channel and show love on all the social media that I'm present on. And I hope to see you guys again soon. Bye.